Hello, everyone, wherever you are. I hope you're having a wonderful week so far, despite the market being super crazy. We are here with the latest episode of the Inside Crypto Show, interviews and discussion with regular people just like yourselves. Today, we are joined by Tom Yin, one of the newest research analysts at 21 Shares. He recently published a fascinating article about the collapse and rebirth of Terra. We are going to explore the article and ask some follow up questions that many of you might have. We have to do the usual disclaimer. Anything said by either Tom or myself does not constitute financial advice. Please do your own research. Because it's just Tom today, we get to dive into his background before we get to talk about the Terra article. Tom, welcome to the show for the very first time. Thank you so much for making time in the afternoon, our time, and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. My name is Tom. I just joined 21 Shares 1 month ago. So before I joined 21 Shares, I was working at Standard Chartered as their management trainee. And I have been very interested in the crypto space. And I found that the more I immerse myself into the crypto space, be it like DeFi protocols, metaverse, NFT, the more I believe in the future of this space. And therefore, I want to join this space as soon as possible. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity that 21 Shares offered me. And I'm really happy right now, like working with all these brilliant people, especially the research team, like having daily conversations with them. I learned a lot from these people, and I really like what I'm doing right now, like looking into what is happening in the crypto space and so on and so forth. And here I am. I just finished my first research about Terra and really excited to share more about the details with you guys.
Fantastic. And it is a wonderful article for those people who are listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube video. The links will be down in the show notes. So if you want to read the article or just open up on another window while you're listening to Tom, that's a fantastic idea. We'll have some of the pictures. So if you're on the podcast, we'll have some of the pictures from the article as Tom was talking. So if you're listening, it might be a good idea to look at some of those pictures maybe later. Tom, you mentioned, you were working at Standard Chartered before. I always like to ask this to people. What was that one moment or experience that sort of catalyzed you to say, okay, I've got to jump into crypto? Because I think it's nobody just snaps their fingers and, okay, it's crypto time. So what was that memory or moment or news article or story or friend telling you something? What happened?
Yeah, it's a mixed reason. And first reason is even though I'm a management trainee at a traditional bank, like you got to rotate into different departments, it sounds more interesting. But then in fact, what you're doing is very entry level stuff. And compared to what I'm working on, even though like you're not a full-time crypto employee, but I still enjoy researching different protocols. I like to try them out because I found it very exciting. And the more I do research, I found myself like really into learning about new stuff in the crypto space. And I don't like even after work or on weekends, I do research on different crypto protocols, different projects as well. And therefore, I think that what if I can do it full time? It would be amazing. And I think that I will be great at it because I can do it like 24/7 and I don't mind at all, right? And therefore I took like this opportunity and interviewed at 21 Shares, try to like move to another industry.
Okay, fantastic. What protocols are interesting you these days that you're doing research on besides Terra, which we'll talk about later, but what is fascinating you despite everything that's going on in the market?
Yeah, beside Terra, previously I into the Terra ecosystem. I found it the user experience of the applications really nice, user interfaces as well. And another ecosystem I like is Avalanche, which I believe in that the development of it, they're going on the right track by using horizontal scaling, which is the subnet, which provides app-specific solutions. For example, they have a recent swimmer network for the Kribata NFT game. So Kribata is like a fork to the X Infinity game on Ethereum. And I think I really like another potential applications in the crypto space is the zero knowledge. So zero knowledge, I believe the potential of this is very immense. It's not only applied into like rollups or not just in the cryptocurrency space, but it can expand to a lot of different applications as well. So I feel zero knowledge and I really like the Avalanche ecosystem as well.
Those are some interesting choices. Well, Krabata, very famous. I think
Yeah.
lots of people who are into NFT gaming or into NFTs would have heard about it. That's interesting to look up. Okay, let's jump into today's topic. So, I'm going to just display the top of the article, which is the TLDR. People can look at it while you're talking as well, but I think it's best to always get it straight from you. Before we dive into the guts of today's story, why don't you give our listeners and viewers some background on Terra, Luna, USTC, and LUNAC?
Yeah. So Terra is a new blockchain, and Luna is now a new token as well as the native token for the Terra blockchain. And what the blockchain that we are familiar with previously has been renamed to Terra Classic. And its native token, Luna and UST, has been rebranded to LUNC and USTC. So what is Terra Classic? If previously you guys haven't heard of it. So Luna Classic is a layer 1 blockchain, which is also a smart contract platform that allows developers to build applications on top of it. So you can build DeFi applications, you can build NFTs, you can build GameFi experiences, and so on and so forth. What differentiates Terra Classic from other competitors? Because before the collapse of Terra Classic, it was the second largest DeFi smart contract platform in the crypto space, just behind Ethereum. And they have over 30 billion total value up, which is like asset under management in traditional finance terms. So what attracts so much liquidity for this smart contract platform is that this ecosystem is centered around their algorithmic uncollateralized stablecoin called USTC. So how does this algorithmic mechanism work is users can always mint one USTC using $1 worth of Luna. And conversely, they can also burn one USTC to mint $1 worth of Luna so as to maintain the $1 peg with the US dollar. But what we have to note in this mechanism is that this token has no maximum supply, meaning that whenever users want to exit the USTC position, they can mint LUNC token. So eventually we have seen that LUNC, this token has hyperinflated, which we can discuss it later on. Another thing that we have to note is that USTC is not collateralized because the LUNC token used to convert to USTC is being burnt, meaning that it is wiped out from the circulating supply. So that this is two key things that we have to take note before we dive deeper into the collapse of Terra Classic.
Okay, very good points. Tom, I think you've probably seen the news as well. To bring this home to something very relevant, the USD trans stablecoin as well. Do you think, because I know there's been a lot of discussion in the crypto space about algorithmic stablecoins, do you think such a thing is possible? Because we know, I mean, USTC and LUNAC, they tried, it failed. Justin Sun is trying it, and it looks like it might fail. Maybe, we don't know. I mean, what do you think about algorithmic stablecoins?
So in my point of view, it depends on the reserve assets, whether it is highly correlated to the native token, such as, for example, what Tron's USDT is doing is they're using both stable coins like USDT, USDC, as well as Bitcoin as their reserve asset, and TRX as well. And another algorithmic stablecoin that I would use as a comparison is Frax Finance, Frax algorithmic stablecoin. And the key differences is Frax algorithmic stablecoin is using USDC as the reserve token, meaning that USDC has a very low correlation with the overall crypto market. So whenever there's a market downturn, the reserve can stay above the average drawdown from the market. However, when it compares to like US Luna token, as well as Luna also have used Bitcoin as the reserve as well, and Tron using Bitcoin as part of the reserve as well. And these highly correlated assets, whenever there's a market downturn, it will affect the total collateralized ratio of the algorithmic stable coin. So I think that is a key difference between like these two algorithmic stable coin. And as a result, we can see that USD in recent market downturn, it has slightly depegged from the $1 mark, whereas Frax Finance using an uncorrelated asset as their reserve is doing quite well, staying well above, not above, but the $1 peg right now. So this is a thing that we can look into because everything in the crypto space is very early stage. A lot of them is very experimental. So this is a comparison we can make right now.
And that's a very good comparison. Thank you very much for clarifying that. So everyone's very familiar with LUNAC and UST collapsing and the aftermath and what happened to the market. Why do you think it happened the way it did? And do you believe the rumors that the whole situation was premeditated and that there are still rumors abounding about shadow wallets and that sort of stuff? What's your take on that?
Yeah. So I think the simplest term for the collapse is stemmed from the mechanism between USTC and LUNC. So as we mentioned earlier, USTC and LUNC, they have two key issues. LUNC has no maximum supply and USTC is not collateralized. But I think Terraform Labs also recognized the issue. That's why they bought 3.5 billion worth of Bitcoin to act as a reserve asset. However, when we look into the total market cap of USTC before it collapsed, it has around 18 billion. So compared to the value of Bitcoin, it is never enough to back the exit liquidity of USTC. So the collapse of Terra Classic is mainly stemmed from two key issues that we mentioned earlier. So USTC is uncollateralized and LUNC has no maximum supply. So whenever there are USTC holders trying to exit the USTC holding, what they will do is to first sell it on decentralized exchange or centralized exchange so that they can get immediate stablecoin as a return. So we have seen that the first DPEG started in decentralized exchange and centralized exchange. We've seen huge sell-off on Curve Finance and huge sell-off on like different centralized exchange as well. And what users will do eventually is once the decentralized exchange and centralized exchange, the price level deviate from the $1 mark, what they can do is remember that we always have a mint burn mechanism so that users can always get their $1 value back by burning one USTC for $1 worth of Luna. So eventually, what this would result is LUNC will act as the exit liquidity for the USTC holders and will crash the price of LUNC because it will mint a lot of LUNC into the market. So before the collapse of Terra Classic, this total circulating supply of LUNC is around 340 million. And after the collapse of Terra, it has hyperinflated to 6.5 trillion token in the market supply. So we have seen that basic supply and demand, like the supply has increased tremendously. That's why the price has dropped tremendously as well. So this is basically what happened to the LUNC token as well as the USTC token. And while the LUNC tokens and USTC tokens also a representation of the Terra ecosystem, so whenever the LUNC tokens is dropping, it will also affect the USTC holders' confidence towards the whole Terra ecosystem. And then what they would do is try to exit the position even faster, which causes like a deterioration or a vicious cycle of the mint burn mechanism and eventually cause what we always refer to in the crypto market as death spiral. So this is what happened in the collapse of Terra. And regarding your question about whether this is a coordinated attack, so I really like a research, like an on-chain analysis done by Nansen that we can take reference to as well. So they have found out there are 7 key addresses that responsible for the immense sell-off on Curve Finance. And one of the addresses is belong to our recent a player that we mentioned very frequently in this day, which is Celsius. So Celsius, they have a wallet address that is responsible for selling 175 million UST token into the Curve pool. And another key transaction that happened during the DPEG event is there is a one single transaction that sell off 85 million UST token and eventually caused an imbalance towards the UST versus the free pool Curve pool. So eventually, initially before all the sell-off, the percentages of UST is around 60%. And right after the immense sell-off, it has jumped tremendously to around 90 something percentage. So we have seen that there is huge sell-off pressure on the UST token on Curve Finance.
Wow. That is super, just reveal some details that I wasn't aware of. That is highly impressive. Looking at LUNAC, looking at price action in the market, Do you think lunacy has a place in the current state of crypto? As much as it's changed so much in the last 2 to 3 months, there's a lot of hope behind it. People are like, let's just burn lunacy. There have been proposals for that. And some people have some protocols that said, yes, we will support lunacy. Does lunacy have a place in crypto today?
Yeah, in my point of view, or like analyzing the current market data, lunacy still have like a short to medium term market, like a position in the market, because there is some community players still trying to burn as much lunacy as they can, trying to back to the state before it hyperinflated. So there is a lunacy DAO responsible for burning as much lunacy as they can. But it has this circling supply of lunacy has jumped tremendously. It is around 2,000 times. So no matter how much lunacy you can burn, it is very hard for you to go back to the former self. And what we have seen here is a lot of the protocols on Terra Classic has actually migrated to the new Terra blockchain. And even though some of the protocols said that it will continue to support the Terra Classic ecosystem, but I doubt there will be continuous development in this ecosystem, because currently the total value lock in Terra Classic has dropped tremendously. I think it is around like 30 million to 15 million right now. Compared to previously, it is 30 billion. So it has shrunk tremendously. And Terra Classic ecosystem is centered around the USTC algorithmic stablecoin. And the key issue is that this algorithmic stablecoin is still trading well below the $1 peg. I think it's like 1 cent right now. So it makes users very hard to use the Terra Classic ecosystem again. And due to another fact that is previously a lot of liquidity is from institutional players or VCs. And after the collapse of Terra Classic, and it has tremendously damaged the trust and confidence from these VCs and institutional players as well. And I don't think in short to medium term they will come back to the ecosystem again. So I think in short to medium term there will be some like retail investors continue try to restore the peg and remain like liveness of the blockchain. But in longer run, a lot of the liquidity and protocols will shift to the new Terra blockchain.
That makes total sense. Looking into the future, looking at the sort of the example of Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. Ethereum is 10 times larger than Ethereum Classic. And what happened there? In a few years, are we going to expect Luna and Lunacy to be in that same place where there is some development happening with Lunacy, but it's still very small, very minor? There's a very sort of small community behind it, and there's a larger community. Are they going to be able to coexist peacefully, or are we just waiting for Luna Classic to fail?
I think they will remain in the market, given like most of the infrastructure applications still supporting this blockchain, such as the Terra Station wallet and some of the protocols like Anchor Protocol, Mirror Protocol, Astroport. These protocols are the major players in the DeFi space in Terra Classic, and they are still supporting the Terra Classic blockchain. I think in short run, they will still be in the crypto space, but in longer run, since there will be very unlikely there will be new developments in terms of DeFi or NFTs, I don't see like new developments on this blockchain anymore, because no more VC funds, no more centralized entities will pool money or use the Luna Foundation is not going to pool like new incentives to attract developers to build on them. I think most attention will be focusing on the Terra blockchain in the longer time frame, whereas Terra Classic will in the longer run will fade out eventually. But like in shorter time frame, they will coexist for a short period of time.
Everything happened. We saw threads and Reddit, the typical, the American suicide hotline was posted very unfortunately. Lots of famous YouTubers. The Moon on Twitter, a famous tweet was like he lost 120K in UST and that sort of stuff. What lessons do you think people should take away from this, from the retail perspective and the institutional perspective?
Yeah, I think one of the key lessons that retail investors and institutional investors can learn from this event, like including me as well, definitely, is do better research, understanding the underlying risk, and do better diversification. I have heard that like a lot of influencers on Twitter and YouTube, they're suggesting that do not allocate more than 15% in one single ecosystem, because every ecosystem, even though like they claim is stable coin, but there could be smart contract hack, centralized entity hack, and different sorts of underlying risks. So we have to better diversify our portfolio into different ecosystem and into different tokens so that we can be less centralized, no, not as centralized, but one single token fell. So if we have like more diversified portfolio, even though one cryptocurrency could fail or fail eventually, we still have like other positions that remain healthy. So I think this is one of the key reasons that we can learn from this event.
It's a very good suggestion. Definitely something people should take to heart. This is not on the script today, but I've seen a lot of media articles in the last month and a half or so. They've mentioned how crypto is very tribalistic in the sense that if somebody's like a ADA developer, or the idea of maxis, people say Bitcoin maximalist, Ethereum maximalist. How do we get those kinds of people to diversify? People, they've got into Avalanche. Avalanche is that, or they're into Solana NFTs and they're only buying Solana and do DeFi on Solana. How do we encourage people to diversify, or just have to say, let them learn the hard lessons of not being diversified? What's your thought about that?
Yeah, I think it is wise to have conviction bets, but how like the bets shouldn't be too large that it will affect your wealth of your portfolio. I think this is very important. One step to encourage those like tribes to try to diversify is that I think better education is very important, because each ecosystem or each smart contract platform has their features. For example, like Ethereum, definitely they have the coolest application because they have the longest history, and they are one of the like institutional players are most comfortable with investing in the Ethereum blockchain. But on the flip side is that Ethereum is very congested previously. Right now is like fine right now due to less activities in terms of DeFi and NFTs. But look into other ecosystem like Solana. They have very vibrant community in terms of developing NFTs and GameFi applications. And StepN is also a very popular protocol, which we haven't seen in other ecosystem as well. And Avalanche, actually, they will also launch a fork of the StepN, move to an application called Step App. But then StepN is a very original application on Solana ecosystem where we haven't seen it from other layer one blockchain as well. And Avalanche, for example, they're also using a very novel horizontal scaling solution like subnets. I think it is very important to educate investors about different ecosystem, what are the edges, what are the potential and the differences between these ecosystems so that they could be more comfortable with investing in several different tokens.
I totally agree. I think definitely education is the key. Accessible education. There's
Yeah.
so much noise in crypto. There's so many resources that people can rely on. And I think that is part of the nature of the internet as well, is what is real, what is not real, what is accurate, what is not accurate. It's definitely a big issue. So Tom, lots of crypto personality, media critics, big media as well, they say that, what Terraform Labs has done wasn't bad. Despite a lot of people saying the algorithmic stablecoin idea is bad, they said it was an innovation. It was something that they tried out. It didn't work. It failed. And like we talked about it earlier today, and you've mentioned some good points about it as well. Do you think algorithmic stablecoins have a future?
I think it depends on the reserve asset as well as the collateralized level. So I think as of right now, I wouldn't say that algorithmic stablecoin is over, because we have seen that right after the collapse of Terra, we have seen that people are still comfortable with investing in other algorithmic stablecoin like USD, and even they are offering like very unsustainable APY as well, which is a kind of a red flag. Like they're offering like 50% APY for providing a liquidity position on Curve Finance. So I think even after the Terra collapse, people are still comfortable with trying out different algorithmic stablecoin. And after the Terra collapse, I think most of the people are aware of the underlying risk, but then they're still comfortable with investing in algorithmic stablecoin, meaning that people are still willing to experiment and still think that algorithmic stablecoin could be the future, because one thing that I really agree about what Do Kwon said is we really need an decentralized money in the decentralized ecosystem. And that is not coming from like Tether's USDT. This is not coming from Circle's USDC. We really need to have a decentralized money. But right now, we don't see a really clear winner yet, be it DAI or Frax or like RAI, which is Ethereum like stable coin as well. We haven't seen a clear winner yet, but then I really think that we still need a decentralized money because like the stablecoin issued from centralized entities, meaning that they have the ability to freeze your fund, which is not preferable in a decentralized economy. So I think that in the future we will still see different experiment in developing different decentralized money, be it algorithmic stablecoin, be it over collateralized one or like partially collateralized stablecoin. We'll continue to see like new innovation trying to learn from the Terra's collapse or USDD's mechanism to try to improve based on this mechanism.
Okay. Very good point. Tom, to sort of end off today's show, I thought we could go over some of the more recent news. With Terraform Labs and Dokkan and stuff, there's been a bunch of legal action. The most, like, probably the biggest news as well is Binance is being sued by, I think, 70 70 users of the platform in a class action lawsuit where they're saying Binance didn't do enough to protect them, or Binance was in on the UST scam, or whatever you want to call it. Is there going to be a fallout to Terraform Labs or to centralized exchanges because they didn't protect their users? You're not a lawyer, of course, I should mention that. Besides, of course, you worked for Standard Chartered as well, but you were not a lawyer in disguise. So, in your general opinion, as a researcher, what do you think's going to be the possible fallout?
I still see there will be continuous lawsuit towards Terraform Labs, and there will be different potential sources quoted from Terraform Labs employees, but these sources are really hard to verify because most of them are anonymous. But I believe that we will continuously to see different lawsuit or different cases regarding Terraform Labs and different centralized exchange regarding this collapse of Terra. And I'm also really interested because a lot of the lawsuit is from different countries, not directly in Singapore where Terraform Labs is incorporated. So one of the recent subpoena is from the US, where the US court has asked the SEC to check with Terraform Labs because previously Terraform Labs has refused to cooperate with SEC, but then the judge has already have a judgment that the Terraform Labs has to comply with the SEC regarding the Mirror protocol, which will be a very interesting case because will Terraform Labs comply with the regulation because they are incorporated from Singapore, and right now they are no longer like working very involved in the new Terra blockchain because this Terra blockchain is community-led blockchain. So I think it will be very interesting to see what is going forward in the future.
I think it might be a good time to sort of reflect in a sense that this was like probably one of the biggest sort of detonations or explosions in crypto's history in recent years anyway. Do you think this is going to be the last time? I do think everyone's going to be like ready, okay, we can't allow this thing to happen again, or because of the innovation and the speed of innovation in crypto, people in the space should expect more such events until crypto reaches maturity?
Yeah, I really like your point that innovations happen really fast. This is one of the upside of the crypto space, but also the downside because there are all sorts of experimental protocols in the space, and a lot of them is very early stage as well. And we should expect, because what we want from this decentralized economy is that we are not bounded by like a lot of regulations, which is an upside. We can choose to invest in different protocols freely without any like censorship, which is one of the upside. But in the meantime, we also have to understand the downside is there will be no one bailing you out whenever there's a collapse, and you have to always do your own research about the underlying risk of different protocols. And you also have to understand like a lot of the technology, a lot of the mechanism is like in experimental stage as well. So we have to understand some of the protocols will fail. And if we look into the previous cycles, a lot of projects actually is not existing in the current cycle. So based on the previous history, we also can note that a lot of the protocols will fail eventually. So we have to do very thorough research through learning from different channels such as Amun's podcast and 21 Shares Research, right? I think there is a lot of different cool resources in space that we can leverage and learn more about.
Definitely. Tom, any final words about LUNAC, USTC, your article, anything you want to add? Words of wisdom for our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I think the last point that I want to make is that everyone has to be aware of that every cryptocurrency has very different mechanism and different teams, different technology behind. Even though we have seen that the Terra blockchain has collapsed, but it doesn't mean that other protocols will face similar risk. So Terra collapse is a very unique event that we haven't really seen before because they're using a layer 1 blockchain as the exit liquidity for an algorithmic stablecoin. And even though USDD has a similar mechanism, but it's not exactly the same at the end of the day. And in the crypto space, vertical, we also have different industry like software development. We have data storage. We have layer 2 scaling solutions. We have NFTs application. We have DeFi applications. Every cryptocurrency is very different. So don't lose faith. Crypto has still tremendous potential. We also have to note the underlying risk. This is an alarm to everyone, like alert to everyone, the importance of risk management as well.
Nice. That is a wonderful way to end off today's podcast. Tom, for people who are listening and watching you on YouTube, besides following 21 Shares everywhere, besides following Amun everywhere, are you okay with people following you on social media?
Yeah, definitely. Follow me on social media. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to connect as well.
So should they, because I know, I think I have your Twitter, I'm pretty sure. Twitter is the best place to follow you, or LinkedIn, or what's the best place to follow you?
Yeah, you can follow me like on LinkedIn or Twitter. Both are fine as well. I'm both active like on these two platforms.
Okay, so I will include those links in the show notes for the podcast, for the YouTube video as well. And definitely keep an eye out because Tom always posts interesting things on social media. And Tom, thank you again for your time. And hopefully we can get you on when you publish your next article that is lighting up the internet, as they say.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well. Thank you very much, Brian.
No problem. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day and keep calm, and we will talk to you guys later.